Hi, and welcome to STEAM Kids Virtual Classroom. I'm your host, Peter Romero, science geek extraordinaire, coming to you today from Bike Shop Studios right here in downtown Greeley. Bike Shop is a video production and live streaming company, and we do all kinds of fun things with video, anywhere from production to live streaming to green screens, large events, Zoom calls, anything like that. So, we have been talking a lot about outer space, and especially the planets in our solar system. But today we're going to go a little bit beyond that and talk about the stars. Now, as you probably know, our sun is the closest star to us, and since it's so close, it kind of looks a lot different than the stars you see in the night sky. It's brighter, it puts out a lot more heat, but actually it's not that different from the stars you see in the night sky. Actually, it's exactly the same. The sun is pretty average in terms of its characteristics. It's average in color, average in temperature, size. It's about halfway through its lifetime as a star. But every star you see when you go out in your backyard and look up is a lot like the sun. Stars are large balls of hydrogen and helium gas, which are undergoing nuclear fusion. So the hydrogen is transmuting into helium, and it's in the process putting out a ton of heat and light and energy, and that's what sustains our life here on Earth. But the sun is only one of about 100 million stars in our galaxy, the Milky Way Galaxy. So 100 million, if you can conceive of that, that's a 1 with 11 zeros after it. So our galaxy is just packed with stars, and most of them are pretty far away. Our sun is about 8 light minutes away from the Earth, so it takes light 8 minutes to get from the sun to here. But the next closest star to the Earth is about 4 light years away, and most of them are a lot further away. So the Milky Way Galaxy is about 105,000 light years across from edge to edge. And the Milky Way is a spiral galaxy, and you can actually see the Milky Way Galaxy if you go outside. If you're fortunate enough to live in a place where there's not a lot of light pollution out in the country, or if you live in northern Colorado, you can always go to the mountains or go out to the Pawnee grasslands and get a really dark night sky. You can actually see the Milky Way. It stretches like from the northeast up overhead and then back down to the southwest, and it just looks kind of like a pale glowing band, very faint up in the sky. And it's because it looks like a band because we're looking at it edge on, we're inside of it. It's, if you looked at it from the side, it would be a spiral. But we're looking at it from the edge. And if you ever see a picture online of the Milky Way shown as a spiral, you can be sure that it's just an artist's rendition of it, because we don't have any actual photographs of the Milky Way from outside of it. We've never sent a spacecraft that far. And if we had, it'd be millions of light years away, so it'd take millions of years to get the photos back. So those are just pictures. But yeah, and stars themselves have lots of variation. Our sun is a yellow star, but there are red stars, orange stars, blue stars, white stars. And the red stars tend to be cooler in temperature, still very hot, but cooler. And the blue stars are very, very hot. And then different sizes too. Stars can be as small as even like our planet Saturn. There can be stars that size, all the way up to supermassive, gigantic stars that if you put them in the middle of our solar system would go out to the orbit of Jupiter. So like the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, would be completely engulfed by a star that size. So a lot of variety out there. And then this might blow your mind. The Milky Way Galaxy, with its 100 billion stars, is only one of about maybe up to 2 trillion galaxies in the universe that we know about. And so 2 trillion is, again, a 2 with 12 zeros after it. So 2 trillion galaxies times several hundred million stars for each galaxy is just an innumerable and unimaginable quantity of stars that exist in the universe. And what's interesting is, up until pretty recently, the 8 planets in our solar system were the only planets that we knew about in the whole universe. We weren't even sure if any other stars had planets until 1992, when we discovered the first, what we call exoplanet, which is a planet orbiting a different star than our sun. And since then, over the past 30 some years, we have discovered, I think, thousands of exoplanets, planets around other stars. And it's a really difficult thing to find an exoplanet because even with the most powerful telescopes we have, most stars still, you zoom them in all the way, and most stars still just come out as a couple of pixels. And so if the star is the large object, then a tiny planet next to the star is going to be invisible. And so the way we were able to find these exoplanets was, if you've got a star, you've got a planet orbiting that star, if the planet is massive enough, it'll actually cause the star to wobble back and forth a little bit because of the gravity of the planet. And so it was just by detecting these wobbles in stars that we were able to deduce that exoplanets were there. And I think since then, we've been able to actually visualize some of these planets, but they're tiny. So we don't know a lot about exoplanets. There's probably as much variation in them as there is between stars. I think we've somehow managed to ascertain that there are some exoplanets that are gas giants that are real close to the star, so they're hot, like Jupiter, except hot. There are probably planets that are all ocean, planets that are all lava, planets with different chemical compositions. But again, they're so far away and it's very difficult to study them. So we have a lot of studying to do before we can say much about exoplanets. But coming back into our own backyard, if you look up at the stars at night, you really can only see about 2,000 individual stars, which, compared to the 100 million stars that are in the Milky Way is not very many. And that's just because stars, the further away you get, the fainter they get, the harder they are to pick out. So the stars you can see at night are really probably only within a couple hundred light years of the Earth. And those stars are organized. I think people in ancient times kind of started noticing groups of stars that seemed to go together and form shapes, and they started playing this game of celestial connect the dot and making pictures out of these star formations, and we call those constellations. And they were doing that not only for fun, but also because it helps with navigation. If you're exploring, it's helpful to know what direction you're heading. You can tell that by looking at the constellations in the sky. And so we're going to do an activity today where we make our own constellation. We've provided a sheet of blank white paper in your bags for you, and so all you'll need in addition to that is a Sharpie or a big Crayola magic marker or something like that, something that can make a big mark. And we're going to draw our own constellation. So the first thing we're going to do is just draw some stars. Now don't don't be random about it like that. Kind of put some thought into where you're going to place each star. I think I'll place a couple there, maybe one down here. And you can draw them as dots, you can draw them as circles. I'm drawing them as little stars. And just kind of whatever feels right. I think I'll just put a few, maybe a couple right next to each other. One there, I don't know. Maybe about 10, 15 stars. I like putting a couple that are right next to each other sometimes. Some big ones, some small ones. Maybe one here. And then once you've got all your stars, just kind of step back from it and look at it and see, does that look like anything recognizable? I think in my case, it kind of looks like some kind of an animal, maybe a cat or a dog or a tiger. So the next step, I'm going to start connecting, kind of just playing connect the dots with my stars. Just draw, make this the head. And then kind of the neck, body, and then this part can be the tail of my dog. Back leg, forepaws. And yeah, that's kind of how it was when the ancient people first designed their constellations. And I think a lot of the time they used Roman mythology or Greek mythology, but you can make it anything you want. You can make it an animal, you can make it your sister, you can make it the refrigerator if you want to, anything. And if you really want to get creative, you can also take crayons or colored pencils, and after you've done the skeleton like this, then you can draw an actual animal around it and do it as nice as you want. So thanks for joining us on this episode of STEAM Kids Virtual Classroom. This is our last episode in the Outer Space series. And we'll be back around mid-April again with another series on weather. So we'll see you then.